I proposed to the woman I loved, and she told me her career mattered more than building a life with me. Years later, when I was finally married and happy, she showed up unannounced at my office, saying she'd made a mistake. She chose her moment too late, and I was no longer the man she expected to be waiting. I still remembered the exact way she looked at me when I proposed. Not shocked, not angry, just distant, like she was already somewhere else, measuring her future against mine and finding it inconvenient. But that came later, before everything fell apart, before time stretched things thin and brought them back together in ways I never expected. My life was simple in the way you only recognize afterward. I was born and raised in Ohio, the kind of place where people asked what you did for work before they asked what you dreamed about. My dad worked in logistics. My mom taught elementary school, and they both believed in showing up every day and doing your part. There wasn't much talk about passion or purpose at the dinner table. Stability was the goal. Anything more was a bonus. I grew up average in almost every measurable way. Average grades, average height. I wasn't the kid teachers worried about, and I wasn't the one they bragged about either. I played baseball until high school, quit when it stopped being fun, and got a summer job stocking shelves at a hardware store. I liked routine. I liked knowing what came next. After college, I moved to Chicago for work. I was 24, freshly hired as a junior project coordinator at a mid-sized engineering firm downtown. The pay wasn't impressive, but the benefits were solid, and the path forward was clear. If you worked hard, kept your head down, and didn't screw up, you could build something resembling a life. I met her, Emily, at a mutual friend's birthday party a year later. She stood out immediately, not because she was loud or dramatic, but because she spoke with confidence about things most people our age were still pretending to understand. She worked in marketing for a tech startup and talked about career growth the way other people talked about travel or relationships. It wasn't off-putting. It was impressive. We started dating slowly. Coffee after work turned into dinners, dinners into weekends together. She was driven, organized, always thinking 3 steps ahead. I liked that about her. It balanced me out. Where I was steady, she was ambitious. Where I was content, she was restless. For 3 years, we built a life that looked good from the outside. Shared apartment, shared friends, shared plans that mostly involved words like eventually and someday. I supported her career moves, her late nights, her constant networking. She supported me too, in her own way, even if she didn't always understand why I was okay staying where I was. When I proposed, I thought we were aligned enough to make it work. I was wrong. She told me she loved me, but marriage wasn't something she could think about yet. Her career was her priority. She said it calmly, like it was a reasonable delay, like I was asking her to pause a meeting instead of her life. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I told her I understood, even though something in me shifted quietly that night. We broke up not long after. No big fight. No dramatic ending. Just a gradual recognition that we were walking in different directions and pretending the distance wasn't growing. Years passed. My career moved forward in steady increments. Promotions came slowly, but they came. I became someone people relied on, someone trusted with decisions. I married a woman who didn't see commitment as a compromise, someone who chose me without hesitation. By the time Emily walked back into my life, standing in the lobby of my office building, I was no longer the man she'd left behind. But she didn't know that yet, and neither did I fully understand how much the past still had to say. The night I proposed, I thought I'd planned everything right. Dinner at a place she liked. A walk along the river walk where the city felt quieter, softer. I kept checking my jacket pocket like the ring might disappear if I didn't. Emily was talking about work, about a campaign she was excited about. She always came alive when she talked about her career. I loved that about her. Or at least, I thought I did. When we reached a quiet stretch, I stopped, turned to her, and got down on one knee. I said her name first. I told her I loved her. I asked her to marry me. She didn't react the way people do in movies. She didn't cry or laugh or reach for me. She just stared at the ring like it was something fragile she hadn't asked for. "Can we talk?" she said. I stood up slowly. She took a breath, then told me she loved me, but she couldn't say yes. Not now. Her career was her top priority. She said marriage would change expectations, that people would assume she'd slow down, and she couldn't afford that. What hurt wasn't just what she said. It was how prepared she sounded. Like this was an answer she'd been carrying for a while. I asked what that meant for us. She said she still wanted to be together, just not engaged. Not yet. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I said okay, even though something inside me went quiet that night. We tried to keep going after that, but the balance was gone. She stayed later at work. More events, more trips, more distance. I stopped bringing up the future because every time I did, I saw that flicker in her eyes, like I was asking her to choose when she already had. A couple of months later, I asked her if she saw me in her life the way I saw her in mine. She said, "I don't know." We broke up a week later. No shouting. Just two people sitting at a kitchen table, realizing they wanted different things at different speeds. After that, I focused on work. Promotions came slowly, but they came. Over time, Emily faded into a lesson instead of a wound. Then I met Claire. She was steady in a way that felt unfamiliar at first. When she asked what I wanted out of life, I told her the truth. I wanted peace. I wanted to be chosen without hesitation. I wanted a future that didn't feel like I was waiting for permission. When I proposed to Claire, it was in our apartment while she was making coffee. No spectacle, just certainty. She said yes before I finished the question. By the time Emily showed up again, years later, I was married, settled, and on my way to pick up my wife for lunch. I saw Emily standing in the lobby of my office building, older, sharper, still composed. She said she'd heard I got married. She said she'd made a mistake, that she shouldn't have let me go. Before I could respond, Claire texted me that she was downstairs. Emily asked to talk. I told her not today. I said it wasn't fair to my wife, and it wasn't fair to me. Claire walked up moments later, calm and observant. I introduced Emily as my ex. Emily looked at her the way someone looks at an answer they don't like. Emily hadn't come to talk. She'd come to reclaim something she thought she'd set aside. And as I stood there with my wife beside me, I realized just how much had changed and how much she still expected to be the same. Lunch that day should have felt ordinary. In theory, nothing about it was different from any other weekday. We slipped away to see each other between work hours. Same restaurant. Same table by the window. Same quiet relief of being off the clock for 40 minutes. But I carried the lobby with me. Claire noticed right away. She always did. She waited until our food arrived, until the server walked away, until the noise around us settled into background blur. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded automatically, then stopped myself. "I will be." I just ran into someone I didn't expect. She didn't push. She took a sip of water, gave me space to decide how much to say. That was one of the things that made her feel safe. She never tried to pull things out of me by force. "It was Emily," I said finally. "My ex." Claire's expression didn't change much, but her attention sharpened. "The one you proposed to?" "Yeah." I told her what happened. Not every word, not every look, just the shape of it. How Emily had shown up out of nowhere. How she'd said she made a mistake. How it felt less like an apology and more like someone checking whether a door was still unlocked. Claire listened quietly, one hand resting near mine on the table. "And how did it make you feel?" she asked when I finished. I thought about it for a moment. The answer surprised me. "Not tempted," I said. "Just unsettled. Like someone knocked on a wall I thought was solid." Claire nodded. "That makes sense." She didn't ask me to reassure her. She didn't ask what Emily looked like or what she wanted next. She just reached over and squeezed my fingers once. "Thank you for telling me," she said. I thought that would be the end of it. 2 nights later, it wasn't. I was still at my desk at home when the email came through. I recognized Emily's name instantly. My chest tightened in that reflexive way old memories still had, even when they didn't carry power anymore. I didn't open it right away. I shut my laptop and went to help Claire with dinner, pretending nothing had happened. But the unopened message sat in the back of my mind, tapping quietly. After we ate, I told her. She emailed me. I said, "I haven't read it yet." Claire leaned against the counter, arms folded loosely. "Do you want to?" "I don't want it hanging over us," I said. "I'd rather know than guess." She nodded. "Okay." I opened it. The email was long, careful, written the way people write when they want to sound reflective without admitting regret outright. Emily talked about timing, about pressure, about being young and afraid of choosing wrong. She said she believed focusing on her career was the responsible choice, the smart one. She wrote about burnout, about watching friends get married while she stayed late at the office, telling herself she was building something that would make it worth it. Then came the line that stayed with me. "I thought you'd still be there when I was ready." I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. Not I hoped. Not I wondered. I thought. like I'd been paused, like my life was supposed to wait for her schedule to clear. The email ended with a request to meet for coffee. Nothing dramatic. Just to talk, to clear the air. I closed the laptop. Claire watched me carefully. Do you want to respond? No, I said, and the certainty in my voice surprised me. Because I don't think she wants closure. I think she wants reassurance. That she still matters, Claire said quietly. Yeah. I didn't reply. For about a week, nothing happened. I let myself believe that was the end of it. Work filled the days. Life returned to its normal rhythm. The email became something I almost forgot. Then she showed up again. I was leaving the office later than usual, coat slung over my shoulder, phone in my hand. I stepped onto the sidewalk and nearly ran straight into Emily. Hey, she said, like this was accidental. It wasn't. My stomach dropped, not from fear, but from irritation. Emily, I just wanted to know if you saw my email, she said. I did. And I chose not to respond. She frowned slightly. Can you tell me why? People moved around us, brushing past, the city indifferent to our unfinished history. I kept my voice low. Because meeting you isn't appropriate, I said. And because I don't think it would change anything. She crossed her arms. You're acting like I hurt you. You didn't hurt me, I said. You just didn't choose me. And that choice had consequences. Her jaw tightened. I'm not asking you to leave your wife. I know, I said. That's what worries me. She looked confused. Then what? I met her eyes. You want to know you still mattered. That you didn't miscalculate. That letting me go didn't mean losing something real. Silence stretched between us. I deserve to know that, she said. I shook my head slowly. You deserve honesty. And the honest answer is that what we had mattered then. But it doesn't get to compete with what I have now. She looked away, blinking fast, the confidence she used to wear slipping just a little. You make it sound so final, she said. It is. I replied, not unkindly. It has to be. She nodded once, sharp, like she was bracing herself. Okay. She walked away without looking back. I watched her disappear into the crowd, feeling something loosen in my chest that I hadn't realized was still tight. When I got home, Claire was in the kitchen, music playing softly. She took one look at my face and said, She found you again. I nodded. Outside the building. And I ended it, I said. Completely. Claire stepped closer and wrapped her arms around me. Good, she said, resting her forehead against my shoulder. Not because I was worried, but because you sound done. That night, lying in bed, I thought about how easy it was to believe people would wait. How tempting it was to treat love like something you could pause without cost. Claire reached for my hand in her sleep. I squeezed back. The next morning, I blocked Emily's email. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt like closing a door that had been left open out of politeness long after it stopped serving a purpose. I didn't make an announcement about it. I didn't feel the need to explain. The past had already said everything it was going to say. And for the first time since she'd reappeared, it finally went quiet. After that, life settled into something quieter. Not perfect, just steady. Claire and I didn't talk about Emily again for a while. Not because it was forbidden, but because there was nothing left to say. When something loses its tension, it stops demanding airtime. It becomes background noise, then silence. We moved forward in small, practical ways. A joint savings account. Conversations about childcare costs and neighborhoods we liked. Weekend mornings spent walking aimlessly, pointing out houses we'd never buy and pretending we might. A few months later, Claire told me she was pregnant. She didn't do it dramatically. No wrapped box. No big reveal. She just came out of the bathroom holding a test, eyes wide, like she was still catching up to the idea herself. I stared at it longer than necessary, like it might change its mind if I acknowledged it too quickly. You okay? She asked. I nodded, then laughed, then sat down hard on the edge of the bed. Yeah, I just need a second. She sat beside me, leaning her head on my shoulder. Me too. That night, lying awake, I thought about timing. About how much of my life had once felt delayed, like I was standing in line for permission to start. And now, without trying to force anything, it was all happening. The months that followed were full in a way I wasn't used to. Doctor's appointments, lists, quiet arguments about paint colors, and louder ones about names. We learned how to disagree without it feeling like a threat, how to be tired without turning on each other. I learned that love wasn't the absence of doubt. It was choosing anyway. It was around that time, 7 months into the pregnancy, that Emily showed up again. Not in person. At least not at first. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. A connection request. Her name. Her face, professional headshot, polished smile. I stared at it longer than I should have. It felt almost funny at that point, the persistence. Like she was trying doors one by one, convinced one of them had to still open. I declined it. That should have been the end. 2 weeks later, I was standing outside Claire's clinic, waiting for her shift to end so we could go to a late appointment together. The sun was low, the street quiet. I was checking my phone when a shadow fell across the sidewalk. I already knew before I looked up. Emily stood there, hands clasped in front of her, expression careful. She looked tired. Not physically, exactly. More like someone who'd been carrying the wrong weight for too long. I didn't know where else to go, she said. Something in her voice was different this time. Less confident. Less rehearsed. You shouldn't be here, I said. I know, she replied quickly. I just needed to say this in person. I felt my patience thin, stretched by exhaustion and protectiveness and the sheer audacity of it. Emily, I asked you to stop. She nodded. I know. This is the last time. I promise. I didn't believe her. But I listened anyway. I'm not doing well, she said. Career-wise, I mean. Or, in general. I didn't respond. I built everything around work, she continued. I told myself it would be enough. And it was for a while. Until it wasn't. She swallowed. When I saw you, happy married, it scared me. Because it meant the version of my life I imagined didn't come with a safety net. There it was. Finally honest. I don't want you back, she said quickly, like she'd read my thoughts. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not for choosing my career, but for assuming you'd wait. I studied her face, searching for manipulation, for angles. I didn't find them. What I found was someone finally confronting the cost of their own certainty. I accept your apology, I said. But this has to stop. She nodded again, eyes wet now. I know. Claire's pregnant. I added, not cruelly, just factually. Emily froze. Oh, yes, I said. And I need my life to be calm. I need boundaries. She wiped at her eyes, embarrassed. I never meant to interfere. I know, I said. But intent doesn't change impact. We stood there in silence for a moment, the city breathing around us. I hope you're happy, she said finally. I am, I replied. And I hope you'll be okay. She didn't answer that. She just nodded and walked away, slower this time. When Claire came out a few minutes later, she knew immediately. She was here, she said. I nodded. Claire sighed, then took my hand. Are you okay? Yeah, I said. I think that was really the end. She squeezed my fingers. Good. The rest of that year passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. We painted the nursery. We assembled furniture badly and laughed about it. We argued about whether we needed half the things the internet insisted were essential. And then, one night, everything changed. Claire went into labor earlier than expected. The hospital lights were too bright, the hours too long. I held her hand through fear and exhaustion and something close to awe. When our daughter was born, placed in Claire's arms, something inside me shifted permanently. Not loudly, just deeply. I thought about all the versions of myself I could have been. The ones who waited. The ones who compromised too much. The ones who mistook patience for love. And I felt grateful, not for the pain, but for the clarity it eventually gave me. The past didn't disappear. It just lost its claim. For the first time in a long time, nothing was pulling me backward, only forward. Becoming a father changed the way time felt. Days blurred together, but moments stood out with startling clarity. The weight of my daughter asleep on my chest at 3 a.m. The way Claire looked at me across the nursery when neither of us knew what we were doing but trusted each other anyway. The quiet understanding that whatever version of myself had once waited for life to begin was gone. Work slowed down for a while. Not because I stopped caring, but because I finally understood that ambition didn't have to mean constant motion. I went home on time. I learned how to function on broken sleep. I learned that love could be repetitive and still feel meaningful. Emily didn't reach out again. Not by email. Not through work. Not through some new platform I'd forgotten to lock down. At first, I half expected her to. Old patterns are hard to unlearn, and part of me assumed she might try one last time, just to see if anything had shifted. Nothing did. Occasionally, she crossed my mind. Not sharply, not painfully. More like a thought that drifted through and moved on. I wondered if she found what she was looking for. I wondered if she learned how to live with the choices she'd made. But I didn't wonder what might have happened if she'd said yes all those years ago. That question had lost its power. One afternoon, nearly a year after my daughter was born, I left work early to pick up groceries. As I stood in line, my phone buzzed with a message from Claire. A photo. Our daughter sitting in the high chair, food smeared everywhere, smiling like she'd discovered something miraculous. I stared at the picture longer than I needed to. It hit me then how quiet my life had become, in the best way. No second guessing. No waiting for someone else to decide when I was allowed to move forward. Just days that built on each other, imperfect but intentional. That night, after we put our daughter to bed, Claire and I sat on the couch with the TV on low. She leaned against me, tired in that honest way that came from giving everything you had and knowing it was worth it. "Do you ever regret anything?" she asked suddenly. I thought about it carefully. About how easily regret could turn into nostalgia if you weren't paying attention. "No," I said. "I regret staying quiet longer than I should have. But I don't regret where I ended up." She smiled at that and closed her eyes. Sometimes I thought back to the man I was when I proposed to Emily. How certain I'd been that love meant patience. How willing I'd been to shrink my own needs to make room for someone else's priorities. I didn't judge him. He'd done the best he could with what he knew. But I was grateful I wasn't him anymore. A few months later, I ran into someone who used to know Emily. A mutual acquaintance from years back. They mentioned her casually, said she'd moved cities, switched companies again, was still figuring things out. I nodded, wished them well, and felt nothing sharp in response. No satisfaction, no sadness, just distance. That was how I knew I was free of it. Life didn't come with a dramatic ending or a final conversation that tied everything up neatly. It just kept going, asking you to show up honestly or fall behind your own choices. Emily had chosen a path that made sense to her at the time. I had chosen one that asked me to be fully present, even when it was uncomfortable. Years later, standing in my kitchen while my daughter tugged at my pant leg and Claire laughed from the other room, I understood something I hadn't before. Some people mistake timing for fate. They believe if things don't work out, it's because the moment wasn't right. But sometimes the moment is right. It's the priorities that aren't. And sometimes, the greatest gift someone gives you is showing you exactly where you stand, so you can finally stop waiting and start living. That was the ending I didn't know I was writing back then. And it was more than enough.